Hello folks, the Y Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very, right in the middle of a snowstorm day. Welcome to my home. The name of this video is called The Y Guy Passion of Christ. We all remember that title from that movie years ago. Pretty impressive movie, really. Anyway, this video isn't going to be nearly as impressive, okay? One of my best friends on Facebook and YouTube, his name is Steve Koscheller. I'm not sure if I even pronounced that right, because I've never met him personally, but he's always been very supportive of me and things that I'm trying to share. His last name is Koschella. That's a shout out to him because, you know, check him out on YouTube. But anyway, he wrote something on one of my, either a post or one of my videos on YouTube. He wrote, "I love JJ and his passion." JJ stands for Jonathan Jones, which is an avatar name, by the way. It's not my real name. But anyway, he said, "I love JJ and his passion, but I do admit to hope that he may one day shift from an emphasis on defeating the negative to proclaiming the positive. Christ in you is the message of the gospel, not just there is no hell." Close quote. Okay, now this is what Steve wrote. And I identify with him. I really do. And I really can't say anything negative. Speaking of negative, I can't say anything negative about what he just wrote. But anyway, if Steve feels this way, and I respect his opinion tremendously, then it's safe to assume that others might be thinking the same way. So as long as I can take a breath, it's never going to happen, Steve. And the rest of you that feel the same way, I'm sorry, it's never going to happen, that I abandon "there is no hell" message. And here's why, and that's what this video is all about. And it's about the passion of Christ. And you'll understand here in a moment. Steve's conviction, or possibly yours, you who are viewing this, your conviction is not mine necessarily. All right? And conviction just simply means God bringing to mind. Or bringing to mind in the Greek. Another translation I saw one time is it's him bridging his thoughts to our own. Okay? So you see, so sometimes God bridges his thoughts to one person differently than to another. I mean, that's common sense, right? But anyway, if this is your conviction that we should abandon "there is no hell" message and be more positive, one might ask, isn't Christ in you? Because that's the message that Steve was saying, that Christ in you is the message of the gospel, rather than there not being any hell. So isn't the Christ in you your passion and conviction, Y Guy? Somebody might be asking me. Well, the Christ in you aspect, okay, it's a gift, folks. Basically put on autopilot by God before the foundation of the earth was even laid. It's a passion of God's that we're talking about right now. So when I read the Jesus account in defining the gospel message, I don't see a Christ in you reference. I don't. But instead, I read how Jesus came to set people free. And this is what I'm basing this video on. And it reads in Luke 4:18, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of the sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed." Okay, close quote. In my opinion, I want to define, using my limited understanding of how Jesus characterized the gospel message. And in doing so, it might make sense why I have a passion, or the passion that Steve spoke of, as in the Christ in you passion, okay? I'm going to define my passion this way. As Jesus said, proclaim release to the captives. Now let's look at that just for a second. A belief in hell is possibly the worst way to be held captive. It really is. A belief in hell is possibly the worst way than anything else that's been introduced to mankind, ever. So wouldn't one think to expose this horrendous lie is relevant and warranted? Okay, and what about poor? That's one of the things Jesus mentioned in that. Most people view this as basically the word poor as like a financial status, but I regard it instead as being, blessed are those poor in the spirit, as Jesus spoke about in the Beatitudes. You know, a belief in hell robs a trust in God, thus making one poor in the spirit. Are you catching my reasoning? How about set free those who are oppressed? Oppressed, it says in the noun. I looked it up. It says noun, quote, the exercise of authority, of power in a burdensome, cruel, or unjust manner. An act of or instance of oppressing or subjecting to cruel or unjust impositions or restraints. The state of being oppressed, the feeling of being heavily burdened, mentally or physically, by troubles, adverse conditions, anxiety, etc., close quote. Boy, that's a good definition of being oppressed. Folks, hell is the most burdensome and cruel. It's unjust unless you think people are deserving an eternity of torture. His justification for a short lifetime of unbelief, unless you feel that way. It really is the most burdensome and cruel thing in existence. You know, these definitions that I just read perfectly characterize a belief in hell. I'm almost done here, okay? I'm not trying to reach what Christians would call, I got to do the quotes again, the lost. I'm not trying to reach them. I'm really not. So what good does it do to proclaim Christ in you, as Steve suggests, you know, to a bunch of people who already think they know that already? But yet they take credit for it. They take credit for Christ being in them. Okay, this isn't a real Christ scenario that they're talking about, a real Christ in you scenario that they're preaching, but a false belief based upon the free will and their choice to allow Christ to be in them. You don't think that's false message? Well, I got to allow Christ to come. Technically, yes, Christ is in them, okay? But without a conviction, again, the conviction that we spoke about, bridging God's thoughts to ours, without God bridging his thoughts to them, without a conviction of the falsehood of the hell doctrine, the message of Christ in you has little merit. Did that make sense? I'm going to repeat that. Without a conviction to the falsehood of the hell doctrine, which is what I'm trying to push, the message of Christ in you has little merit. People are thinking, what? In other words, so what if Christ is in you? So what? Since it's your effort, okay, that accomplished him being in you in the first place. And for those who don't accomplish or put forth the needed effort, there must be ramification, and that ramification is hell. Are you following me on this line of thinking? Are we starting to get why it's so important to keep pushing what some call the negative, yet has an enormous positive outcome? It sure did in my life. I'm so glad that I found the truth in the falsehood of the hell doctrine. Anyway, simply put, the stumbling block that keeps the average Christian from believing in the finished work of Christ in you is a belief in hell. I'm not wrong, folks. And in closing, the more Christians who wake up and realize of the deception about the doctrine of hell, think about this, the more will be set free to proclaim Christ in you to the rest of the world. But will be doing so without threats and the need to slander God. That sounds like good news to me, a good news message to the world. Without threats. Come on. You know, this whole thing kind of goes along with that old saying, that well-known proverb that says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, and teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. You've heard of that one before? Well, how about a why guy proverb? Take this to the bank. Tell a man of Christ in you, and you encourage him for a day. Tell a man that Christ is in all, and you feed him for a lifetime. A belief in hell will not allow this to happen, folks. It just won't. So look me up on Facebook if you'd like, and I'm not even going to go through that whole spiel. Thank you for viewing.